fire. Boy, they're not letting the pollen get them down, are they? I love that. Thank you. Let the grave be open. That's the reason that the Easter season lasts for a long time. This year, it lasts for 8 Sundays. So for 8 Sundays, we're going to have lessons reminding us that Jesus is with us, that Jesus is alive. And then we have stories to prove that Jesus is alive. And I love this text. And I say that each and every Sunday, probably because I love documents that prove to me that I am right about my faith. Right? Woo! Don't you like being right? I love that I find Scripture to be alive and appropriate and relevant today and each and every day. So in this text that we have just read, it's the last chapter in John's story. And I love that this text, we see Simon Peter and some of the few disciples that were with him going right back to what they used to do. Did you catch that? They were going fishing. And so they decided to fish. And I'm sure in their mind, they were trying to unpack the barbaric experience that happened in Jesus' death and crucifixion. But yet, God had redeemed even that, because we know that Jesus had appeared to the disciples 2 times already. So this was the 3rd time that Jesus appeared to the disciples. So here we find the disciples out doing a very normal thing. They were out fishing, right? Now, I first of all was questioning, why are they fishing at night? Why aren't they fishing during the day? So I got stuck on that for a little bit, and I don't know why they were fishing at night. But what I do know is that they caught nada. Not one thing. And then this voice from the shore. Imagine it's early in the morning. Maybe the sun is just beginning to rise. It's kind of like this loving voice, not a scolding voice, says, "Did you catch anything?" And they said, "Nothing." Jesus said, "Toss your net on the other side of the boat, and you'll get that." Now, this story is also in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And that's why I believe that it's true. But Matthew, Mark, and Luke put the story at the beginning of their writing. John puts it at the end of his writing. And so, the disciple that Jesus loved, I think he had a purpose for putting it at the end of the story. We'll get to that in a minute. But the minute that the disciples were given new information, tried something different. I don't know why they decided to do that, but they tossed their net, and what happened? They caught many fish. And it was a miracle that even though they had a huge catch, the net was not even broken, right? Sometime in the story, they realized that it was Jesus. And yet, as they came to the shore, they found Jesus making them breakfast. How cool is that? I love that. Jesus had the foresight of knowing, oh, wait a minute, these characters have been out fishing all night. They're probably hungry. Right. So he began to cook the fish and to get the bread ready, and then he shared it. And did you catch what also Jesus did? He encouraged them to bring some of the fish that they had caught to be part of the meal. And as they were eating the meal, then he asked Simon the questions 3 times, 3 different ways. He asked Simon the question, "Do you love me?" 3 times. I think it's significant. This is the 3rd time that they had encountered Jesus. Remember, Simon Peter denied Jesus how many times? 3 times. And I think that is significant for us, because certainly Jesus has something in mind. They had already had 2 experiences of encountering the risen, resurrected Jesus, and yet they still went to do their own thing. They went to do what was customary. They went to do what they had always done, and that was fish. They were fisher people. That they knew how to do that. And I think Jesus was calling them to a new reality, a new experience. And as I considered this text this week, I was again so profoundly amazed to be thinking, isn't this interesting? Jesus is giving them, the disciples, especially Peter, reason to believe that he belonged in community. And don't we all need to belong to community? Psychologists say that all of us need a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. Not only a sense of just belonging, but it's important to us that we have something to do, something to give to the community, that when we are absent, we are missed. I know when I was going through therapy that I resonated with that. I needed to figure out where I belonged. And I needed not only to figure out where I belong, what in the world would I do within this community? And I learned something very important about that period of my life. That before I could really belong, I needed to know who I was. Who am I? Who is Kenny Callaghan? And my therapist was all too willing to participate in that journey. Now I paid him, and sometimes I was like, Lord, why do I need to come here, Robert, 3 times a week, 1 hour, and then leave with all these questions and homework to boot? And his answer was always the same. You can stop anytime you want, and your misery will be refunded. So I was like, hello. And isn't that the truth? I was on this very holy journey of discovering who I was as an openly gay person. Who am I? Right? You didn't need to tell me, or you didn't need to do anything to beat me up anymore. My sense of self-esteem was in the toilet, and it had been flushed, right? And I had to come to the place where over and over and over again, the thought that I could live in freedom had to outweigh the brokenness that was my reality day in and day out for years. And I could not discover that on my own. And so, thinking that my horror had come from my ex-wife, I decided that the best thing would be just to avoid women at all costs. And in California, I could do that. So I moved to a community where I only interacted with gay men, and it was fabulous for about 5 minutes. Because what I learned in that journey was it was not about my ex-wife. It was not about women. It was not about the naming, blaming, shaming game. It was about my ability to not show up for my life. It was my responsibility to understand why I could not own who I was. And that came when I found a community that accepted me just the way I am. A bunch of people that helped me own my identity, who understood that I was in a season of pain and recovery. And they let me be as vile as I needed to be. And let me tell you, oh honey, you would not want to see me in those days because I was angry and filled with venom. And yet, this community accepted me as I was, broken, searching on a journey. And at the same time, I heard God's voice welcoming me home. And little by little, this angry man turned into somebody who began to believe that God was doing a good thing in my world. And I began to look for my people. I began to thrive in my community, not because I felt less than, but because I knew I belonged. I knew that I was the beloved of God, an imperfect person, living within a world that would only be changed when I decided to do the work to bring that change. And what a wonderful journey it has been. I have delighted in helping some of you go on that journey for yourself, right? The journey of owning who you are. What a joy it is to hear people go on vacation and find people that they resonate in. People where they can be comfortable. People that will help you explore different things. It's a joy to hear some of you that go to Florida and are able to live within this community of women where you can grow as individuals, where you can find a new sense of purpose, a new reality, where you are affirmed as being God's beloved just the way you are. And then you come back home and share with us the things that you've discovered. What a joy that is. And I'm here to tell you, I think that our belonging only can come in community. We live in a culture that says we make our own identity. I beg to differ. Because we will get to know our identity as we interact within community. Because it is within the community that we are affirmed for being the wonderful people that we are. And we can celebrate that. That's real belonging. That's the gift that Jesus gave Simon. The opportunity to be brought back into community. To, on some level, make amends for his denial of Jesus. By 3 times saying, I do love you. We don't know why Simon denied Jesus. But what we do know is that Jesus made a way for him to be ushered back into the community just the way he was. Imagine the power of owning that for ourselves. Imagine being able to admit what we're searching for, our questions, our doubts, our fears, our joys, the excitement of discovering that you can transition into the person that you have always felt you are, but your gender on the outside doesn't match that reality. What a gift that at this church we get that. That you are always welcome just the way you are. Lock, stock, and barrel. And that we can celebrate one another.